Welcome back to The Heat. We're talking about the progress made and challenges still ahead for Chinese Americans as they celebrate Spring Festival. Joining me now is Evan Lau. He is a member of California's State Assembly, and he's one of the youngest Asian American legislators ever elected to such a position. Evan, Happy New Year and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
We have just been talking about a significant development in New York, the fact that the Lunar New Year is now going to be celebrated in that state, and Chinese American students are going to be able to take the day off. What is the situation in California?
Well, certainly we have the opportunity to recognize the Lunar New Year and the celebration of the focus of the culture. And in the state of California, we have passed a resolution to recognize the contributions of these various communities.
Now, you are one of the youngest and most successful Chinese American politicians in the United States. How important is it for Chinese Americans to get involved in the political life of this country?
Well, it's tremendously important. When you talk about the economic power, when you talk about the representation and the sheer scope of global population, it's important that we simply contribute to American society here in the United States, and we continue to expand the relations abroad.
Now, when we look at popular culture, television networks in this country are starting to recognize that Chinese Americans form an important part and a significant part of their audience. There's a new sitcom that's just come out, which is airing on US television right now. It's called Fresh Off the Boat, and as that title suggests, it's about people who've just arrived here. It's about a Chinese American family. Let's watch a clip.
Opened up my eyes, I saw the sign.
Stop, turn off the music.
Eddie, I know you're not excited to leave DC, but you're gonna love Orlando. I've been there for 6 months setting up the restaurant, and I've grown to love it like the daughter we wished Evan had been.
One of the reviewers of that show criticized it for, quote, and this is what he said. He said, it's overriding and constant preoccupation with racial and ethnic stereotypes. Does this show help or hurt Chinese Americans on the way they're viewed by other Americans?
Well, certainly I think there's equal criticism across the board whenever you have any type of focus on the media and in television. But what I think is important is that you can recognize that you have leading male and female roles in a sitcom. And certainly there are stereotypes. That is what television and media is all about. But what I think is important is that we have this conversation to expose individuals. I come from Silicon Valley, where over 30% of the population consists of Asian Pacific Islanders, but perhaps in other places across the country, there might be a smaller population of Asian Pacific Islanders, thus changing the perceptions and the exposure of what Asian Pacific Islanders might be like. So I think it is a conversation, certainly, that is a fair assessment, but I do think it is important to see leading roles in media.
Are there any issues, in your view, that are really important to Chinese Americans, issues that are not getting the attention they deserve right now?
Well, certainly I think education has always been a huge priority for the Asian Pacific Islander community, but particularly now in this region, California, transportation issues, affordable housing, is very challenging for individuals to obtain the Californian and American dream. So this transcends just ethnicity, but is the same challenge that all people face regardless of ethnicity. But I think this is a critical point and a juncture that demonstrates that Asian Pacific Islanders have also contributed much to society, and for the Chinese community in particular, we can see that this is a struggle that the community also faces.
A Chinese American chancellor at an American university, he was recently quoted, and I'll read the quote to you. It says, and this is what he said, it's a daily occurrence to be asked, where are you from? My question is, what about discrimination? Is that a problem for Chinese Americans as well?
Oh, certainly. Even as I am a fourth-generation Californian, speaking more Spanish than I do Chinese, I may be seen as a perpetual foreigner. And so the question about my patriotism still comes into question on occasion. Therefore, I do think it is important that we in the Chinese community get involved in various sectors, whether it be in the private sector, public sector, health community, whatever it might be, but to demonstrate that we can also contribute to our society and we are truly also American.
You are a young American politician. What do you see ahead for Chinese Americans and the opportunities that probably will arise in politics?
Particularly in politics, I think the growing and rapid immigration and the numbers and the growth of Asian Americans and the Chinese is significant. And I think the challenge and the role will also be then how does the focus be to share shared power? How do we make sure that there's equal representation with various ethnic groups that have traditionally had a longer history here in the United States and in California? And so how do we collaborate and find areas of agreement to work on these issues, whether it be education, housing? As I mentioned earlier, all of these issues have an impact on all communities and specifically will also have an impact on the Chinese community.
Right, and I guess the other point is that, you know, the leadership in a country often reflects the constituency of a country. So as Asian American populations grow in this country, as they increase in numbers, we should see more people like you in positions of power.
Certainly hopeful. Here in California, our Attorney General is of Asian descent, our state treasurer, our state controller. Many of the legislators, we have, I believe, 12 legislators now in both the Assembly and in the Senate. And so it is important to get involved in politics. Unfortunately, the areas of public service is not typically a realm of occupation that the Chinese community typically faces and pushes. Rather, it's usually on becoming a doctor, lawyer, and engineer, something rather safe. But it is, again, equally important to give back to society to make sure that we can make it a better place than we found it.
Evan Lau, enjoy the rest of the New Year holiday. Thanks for joining us.